Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as I show you how I make my own seed starting mix as well as sterilize it before using it to plant seeds in. I've been buying my own seed starting mix for years. This year when I ran out of my Pro Mix, which is what I usually use to start seeds, I ended up deciding to make my own seed starting mix. I looked on the internet, found a bunch of different recipes. I found that no two sites had the same exact recipe for seed starting mix. So I went ahead and bought the main ingredients that you would need to make your own seed starting mix. And I've been experimenting with that. That's what I've read is you just want to find a mixture that works for you. The base that you need to make your seed starting mix is either peat moss or cocoa coir. So you choose what's best for you and what's readily available. I've decided to use peat moss because that's what I already had that I bought last year, so I figured I'd just use that again. And then you want to add something else to your peat moss. You can add either vermiculite or perlite or both. If you use vermiculite, it helps with water retention. And if you use perlite, it helps with water drainage. What I decided is I want to use both because I think they both will benefit my seed starting mix. And the ratio that I'm using is 7 parts peat moss to 1 part vermiculite and 1 part perlite. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how I do that. The first thing is it's always good to wear gloves. And if you're indoors, you want to make sure you're wearing a mask. Right now I'm in my garage and the garage door is open, so I feel comfortable not having to wear a mask. And when I talk about parts, I'm talking about this. You want to make sure you're using some sort of a container and you're using equal parts with that container. So I'm going to start with 7 parts peat moss. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And the next thing that I'm going to use is I'm going to use the vermiculite. The vermiculite that I got is a very fine grade vermiculite. And then 1 part of perlite. And then I'm just going to go ahead and mix it up together. In the end, you end up with a nice looking mixture of the peat moss, the vermiculite, and the perlite. I recommend you give it a try and play around with the ratios. I find that especially if you're going to be doing a lot of seed starting, it's cheaper in the long run to make your own seed starting mix. In case you're wondering about the sizes of these bags that I'm using to make my mixture, I'll go ahead and tell you what I have. I have a 5.5 cubic feet of the peat moss, and I bought that from a local nursery. I also have a 23-pound bag of the vermiculite. I also got that from the same local nursery. And then I have a 4 cubic feet bag of the perlite, and I bought that bag from Amazon. So make sure you shop around to find the best deal possible. When you buy your own seed starting mix, you never know if there's some bugs that somehow crawled into that mix. It's totally possible, especially if there was a tear in the bag. What I've been doing lately is making my own seed starting mix, and I'm using peat moss as the base, but I'm also adding vermiculite and perlite to it. There are many ways that some sort of little critters or bugs could have gotten into any of those 3 bags. So what I've been doing is sterilizing my seed starting mix. I use boiling hot water and I put it in and mix it in with the bowl of my seed starting mix. I let it sit for a while and I just make sure that the water is soaked and saturated inside the seed starting mix before I use it. I want to make sure that the soil is nice and cooled down so it doesn't hurt any of my seedlings or my seeds. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and add my nice hot water to my seed starting mix that I made myself. You always want to be careful when you're using boiling hot water. Last year when I used seed starting mix that I bought, I just added cold tap water to it. And the way I look at it is, if you're going to add water to your seed starting mix anyway to pre-moisten it, you might as well add boiling hot water to it. That way you're killing off possible things like fungus gnat eggs, spider mites, other different little flying insects and insects that don't fly that somehow make it into some of your soil, potting mix, seed starting mix, whatever it is that you're using. I usually just go around the whole bowl and just keep mixing it in. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, almost done. So I'm just going to go ahead now and push down on the soil, kind of compress it down. That way it seals in the heat. And it takes typically about an hour to an hour and a half for this soil to cool down. But you want to play around with the time on your end, depending on the size of your container. You can really use anything if you want to use a tote or something else. I've just been using this bowl all along and it's been pretty handy for me. And you can also cover this if you want with some sort of a cover or plastic wrap, something to hold in the heat. And that's pretty much it. It's a simple process to sterilize your soil or your potting mix. I totally think it's worth it if you're doing any sort of planting of seeds or any sort of plants in your house. It just really brings down the chances of you having any sort of bugs in your house. I like to boil water when I'm sterilizing my soil, but you also can take the soil and put it in your oven and heat it up that way. There are different ways to do it, but this method has been the easiest for me. I'd love to hear from you. I want to know, what are you doing different in your garden this year? Are you making your own seed starting mix? Perhaps you're sterilizing it or doing something different. Drop a comment below and let me know. Don't forget to subscribe and like my channel. And finally, make it a great day with gardening.